There's no doubt that Glyndŵr was reluctant to become a Welsh saviour, and there's an explanation for that. Because while many Welsh people might have good reason to view the English as brutal oppressors, Glyndŵr could take a slightly different view. And to understand why, we've come here to the Inns of Court in central London. Why the Inns of Court? Well, because Glyndŵr spent quite a bit of time here as a young man in the early 1380s. What brought him here was what brings people here today. Believe it or not, the future rebel was training to become a lawyer. You do wonder, how on earth did a young man from conquered Wales find himself in these surroundings, in the company of some very powerful and wealthy Englishmen? Well, the key to this is Glyndŵr's childhood, because he lost his father when he was a boy, and he was placed in the care of an Englishman called Sir David Hanmer. And it's quite probable that Sir David paid for Glyndŵr to come here to the Inns of Court, to study law and to qualify as a lawyer. Not only that, Sir David then gave his permission for his daughter, Margaret, to marry Owain Glyndŵr, whose status in English society was suddenly transformed. We can't say for sure why Sir David chose to show Glyndŵr such favour. What we can say is that his patronage transformed the Welshman from someone that upper-class Englishmen would have felt distinctly unsure about into someone they could tolerate, even respect. And the proof of that came in the mid-1380s, when Richard II took Glyndŵr into his service and had him trained as a soldier. And when Richard went to war against the Scots, Owain Glyndŵr was a loyal fighter, wait for this, on the English side, which may surprise some people. After the war, Owain returned home to Wales, still very much, of course, under English rule. He lived a very comfortable life. He had absolutely no reason to rebel. Not yet. In fact, Glyndŵr might well have spent the rest of his life as a loyal servant of the English crown if it hadn't been for a startling series of events that took place in 1399. King Richard II, who'd been so helpful to Glyndŵr, was brutally deposed that year after losing the confidence of the English nobility. His place as ruler of England and Wales was taken by a hardliner, a nobleman called Henry of Lancaster, who now became known as King Henry IV. News of this momentous change spread rapidly, and it caused widespread alarm, not least in Wales. And when a messenger brought word of it to Glyndŵr at his house near the English border, he must have felt a sense of horror and disbelief.
One must remember how deep-seated the idea of a legitimate king was in the Middle Ages. If you upset that, what kind of chaos are you unleashing? And certainly there were many people in England as well, of course, as well as in Wales, who thought that there is nothing now to be loyal to.
Before long, a strong sense of expectation of great events about to unfold spread throughout Wales. And this was soon reinforced by an unwise and deeply provocative act by the new King of England. A few months after he'd been crowned, Henry IV conferred the title of Prince of Wales on his son, Prince Hal, the future Henry V. Now, unlike many other princes of Wales, at least Hal had been born in the Principality. Here in Monmouth, in fact, which is why his statue is there on the Shire Hall. But that wasn't good enough for many Welsh people, because Hal was seen as the son of a usurper, and his appointment as Prince of Wales was seen as a bit of an insult. So they wanted Glyndŵr to raise the banner of revolt. But Glyndŵr, as ever, was very cautious. Glyndŵr's natural reluctance to rock the boat now survived another provocation, one carried out not by the new king, but by an English nobleman called Sir Reginald de Grey. De Grey and Owain Glyndŵr were both landowners. Their estates lay next to each other. But the Englishman, encouraged by the accession of Henry IV, fancied his chances of cutting Glyndŵr down to size. Without a word of warning, towards the end of 1399, Reginald de Grey annexed a large chunk of Glyndŵr's land. And let's be honest, the act would have thrown most people into a fit of rage. But Owain Glyndŵr, true to form, was remarkably calm. Glyndŵr wanted things done by the book. He seemed to have faith in the system. And so he formally petitioned Parliament, which used to meet here in Westminster Hall. His other options would have been to attack Reginald de Grey or to rise up against the Crown. So the English members of Parliament had the perfect opportunity to secure Glyndŵr's loyalty. Guess what? They flunked it. Among those present on the day was a Welshman called John Trevor, and he was Bishop of St Asaph. He was given permission to speak, and he warned Parliament that if they failed to reprimand Reginald de Grey for breaking the law, it would send a disastrous signal back home to Wales. Well, the English MPs didn't seem too bothered. One of them even said, "What care we for these barefoot rascals?" Well, that message was received loud and clear back home in Wales, and very soon the king would have something to think about. In the summer of 1400, after more troublemaking by Reginald de Grey, Henry IV branded Glyndŵr a traitor to the English crown. And this was the event that finally forced his hand. Accepting, at last, that he had a duty to make a stand, he signalled his intention to rebel in the most dramatic way possible. He proclaimed himself Prince of Wales.